This is TWiT.
I mentioned unintended consequences to the U.S. government shutdown, certainly as our U.S. listeners know, unless you're really uninvolved with the news of the day. At the time of this podcast, the U.S. government is partially shut down over a political funding dispute about the proper nature of the enforcement of security at our southern U.S. border. And in a classic example of unintended consequences, a growing number, somewhere around 80 as of the most recent reporting and counting that I've been able to find, 80 different government websites are no longer accessible or have been marked as insecure connections because during this government outage, their servers' TLS certificates have expired and cannot be renewed, apparently, until the government reopens. I have a shot in the show notes here of a notice, "Your connection is not secure." And it says, and this was Mozilla, this was Firefox last night. It said, the owner of, and the site is OWS2.USDOJ, that is the United States Department of Justice.gov, has configured their website improperly. To protect your information from being stolen, Firefox has not connected to this website. This site uses, here's another little twist that we'll get to in a second, HTTP strict transport security, as we know is HSTS, to specify that Firefox may only connect to it securely. As a result, it is not possible to add an exception for this certificate. So you, the visitor of using Firefox, have no recourse. And this US DOJ site was not alone. .gov websites with expired certificates, which are also on the HSTS preload list, including all of the U.S. Department of Justice.gov subdomains, are completely inaccessible by Chrome and Mozilla because the U.S. DOJ, wanting to strengthen their security, has been declaring historically and is on the preload list for these browsers. So you can only get to them this way. So naturally, first of all, I'm sort of surprised that this happened so quickly, but I guess, certificates are constantly rolling over and needing to be renewed. There was also a rockettest.nasa.gov site that is gone, and a Lawrence Berkeley National Lab site, d2l.lbl.gov. What's interesting is that I was curious about those because the rockettest.nasa.gov site, its cert expired on January 5th, and this Lawrence Berkeley National Lab site expired on the 8th. They initially showed warning messages like I read before. Oh, but they did not have HSTS, so you were able to push past the warning saying, I want to go there anyway. I know what I'm doing, or, I'll take the risk or whatever. The problem is those sites also required authentication. And so if you pushed past that, you were then sending your username and password credentials without encryption to the site. So even though it has apparently been impossible to issue new certs during the shutdown, at least those sites have been taken off the air. In the case of rockettest.nasa.gov, when I looked this morning, DNS had been pulled from it, and the OWS2.USDOJ.gov site had its traffic blocked, so you can't get there at all. It still has valid. It's still resolving DNS, but they said, okay, we can at least pulled a plug on this so that people are not trying to log in insecurely. So clearly, the takeaway here is that we should learn a lesson. We're having these temporary government funding shutdowns over political disagreements now relatively routinely. I think this is the third one under the Trump administration. So, and we've broken a record in terms of its length. So it's a function of the size of the window during which certificates cannot get renewed. If these are now breaking length records, there's a greater opportunity for certificates to expire during this time. The good news is we always see these approaching. So I'm hoping that this experience and the fact that we've moved the internet forcefully to HTTPS connections, which is all for the better, and it's certainly good that sites are on the HSTS preload list so that even when their certs expire, there's no loss of security. Except for the fact that you can't get there. But my point is that since we always see these potential shutdowns approaching, it would be great if there was some look at the certs on the servers, and because we know that all of the certificate authorities will credit us with the amount of remaining time on a certificate when they are renewed. So there's no downside to renewing the cert ahead of time. It doesn't cost more money. You're not losing the amount of time that was remaining on the certificate when you renew. So I hope that there's enough awareness of this that the people in the government, as we see the next shutdown approaching, will say, gee, we only have 3 weeks left on this cert, and that may not be enough time. So let's renew now so that the site can stay on the air. Although, frankly, I think it was I remember a previous one where several sites, just put up a banner and said, "We're sorry, during the funding outage or the funding dispute and the government shutdown, our services are not currently available. Come back when you hear otherwise." So anyway, the good news is at least the sites that were offering you the ability to ignore security, at least in the two that I looked at, they had been taken down. They were off the air, which is an improvement.